Hi, I'm Sarah from The Upcoming. An absolute pleasure to be able to speak to you this morning about this really incredible film. Maybe you could just start with a brief introduction for people who aren't familiar with it. What can they expect when they watch Mandrake?
Mandrake is a folk horror, and it explores themes of motherhood and isolation in a small rural community in Northern Ireland. And we do have elements of magic and high threats in there, but fundamentally, a prisoner, an infamous prisoner, is released into the care of a parole officer in this small community, and we watch the events unfold as hysteria takes the town, but also bad things start to happen.
And of course, you worked on short films before, but this is your feature debut. So how did you kind of feel when you first read Matt Harvey's script? And why did you decide this was the right story to tell for your first feature?
Well, when I read Matt's script, this wonderful thing happened where I became so engrossed in the story and engrossed in the themes, and the themes were very important to me, the themes of motherhood, and I wanted to approach it from a feminist angle of to defy the prescribed notion of motherhood. But in speaking with Matt, we realized that we wanted to make the same film, and he loved my perspective and then the visual elements that I wanted to bring to it. And so though that's a rarity, I read a lot of scripts and I have a lot of people approach me, but to find one where you really connect with somebody is like, that's gold, and you have to run with it when you find it.
Mm, definitely. And what do you think that journey was like, going from short film to feature? What could you take from your experience of making those short films? And of course, I guess it kind of put your name on the map in terms of people knowing kind of what your filmmaking style was, but maybe there's still that bit of a jump, and new challenges that come up from doing a full feature.
Well, absolutely. I've been making short films since I was 15, and I probably would have said when I was 15 that I was ready to make a feature film. And I mean, I would have been so thrilled about that all the way through the years. But making short films and writing them and cutting them yourself, it gives you a great idea of story and a great idea of what you need. And I worked on a lot of big stuff. I worked in the camera department for years, and being in those environments of high-end TV and feature films gives you a sense of kind of the order of things on a working set, but the time constraints and how you have to move, and you have to move quickly. And that was certainly something that we faced with Mandrake. We shot the film in 18 days, and it was a mad dash to get it done and get it complete. The major difference between shorts and features is stamina. You have to be prepared to be on this journey for a couple of years. Obviously, with shorts, it can be a week. You can have a turnaround in a week, and your short is done and it's out there. But you have to have that perseverance to make it to the end. So I'm at the end now, and the film is actually, it's going on Shudder, and it's going to have a life, and it leads to more, like, work begets work. So this is leading to more work for me, which is wonderful. But the being on set on your feature film, like walking on that day, I mean, the sheer joy, like I couldn't even describe it. When we wrapped and I was driving home, I was just in tears the whole time because I finally did it, and did this thing I've been talking about since I was a kid, and everybody's ear that I talked off about how I'm a director. It's like, now I can finally go, yes, I definitely am a director, and I can do this.
And I love what you were saying there at the beginning, about it being kind of having this sort of feminist slant to it, and these, this amazing complex female character right at the center, and, not necessarily about the sort of clear cut kind of good and evil that maybe you have sometimes in these kind of horror films or horror infused films. So there's a real complexity there. So we can talk a bit about, particularly and the kind of the playoff between kind of Kathy and Mary.
Yeah, I wanted to. Something I find very interesting is exploring the nuances of people's behavior, and basically the nuances of being good or bad. Within my film, moral code is prevalent for both characters, but the baddie as such isn't doing it because they're evil. They're doing it for a means to an end, and it's about kind of mirroring the cruelty of nature, or the fact that nature doesn't care what we do. It just barrels on, and it creates life or takes life away. And I wanted to make sure that, I mean, I do it naturally anyway, but to pursue this from a feminist angle. And I mean, it was already there in Matt's script, to have these two fleshed out, complicated women that have similarities, but they really rub against each other. And the peril of the end is how those similarities have kind of come to the forefront of Kathy, and what she feels that she might be capable of, having gone through this experience. But I don't think you can explore motherhood and not explore it from a feminist angle. I feel like if you did that, it would be mute. It's such a complicated subject, and I think there's such great degrees of individuality within motherhood that we haven't really had the chance to see. And there's a great wave of films from women that are coming out. There's another great Irish film called I Am Not Your Mother. And Kate and I, the director, we seem to be on the same journey when it came to motherhood, and kind of I feel like there's a similarity between our films, which is we didn't know each other when we were making them or before we made them, but we seem to have landed in the same place, which is fascinating.
And it almost feels like, there's kind of a wave of films, and whether that's drama or whether that's kind of more in the horror space, that is exploring more and more, not just a female experience, but, experiences of motherhood, different experience of motherhood, some of the taboos and, some of the ambivalence that people perhaps have towards it, rather than it being kind of this given, that everyone experiences motherhood in the same way. And so why do you think particularly this genre has emerged as such kind of fertile ground for exploring that? It feels like maybe you kind of, your imagination or the way you manifest things can go that bit further than in a standard drama.
Oh, you're absolutely right. I love being able to manifest issues within a monster or within something fantastical, because it means that you can shine a spotlight on it, but also it can be explored and questioned in very different ways. I watched a great series there called Queer for Fear, that really explores a lot of the themes that I had looked to in the monster movies and the villains of great horror through the decades. And that's the gift of genre, and the gift of what people now refer to as elevated genre or elevated horror, is that we're using it as a tool. It's not so much to just scare you. It's like, I want to leave you with a message. I want to give you a manifestation of my fears and the complicated nature of womanhood. And that's it. It's not that it makes it easier. It puts it into a different spectrum, which people can digest and in perhaps a light way, or a way that they don't really know what they're taking in. If I did this as a straight drama, I do think it would be brilliant. The cast are wonderful, but we certainly wouldn't have the high stakes, and we wouldn't have the exploration of the decisions and the characters when on that drive home from the cinema. I always think that great films, but especially great horror, will follow you home and stay with you and haunt you and make you ask questions.
And coming to kind of the influences perhaps that you have from horror you watched when you were younger growing up. I mean, I know sometimes, watching horror films when you're not really supposed to be yet, and they kind of really stick in your mind, whether you kind of took cues or references from other filmmakers. And then also, how it is infused with kind of, ancient and sort of Irish folklore and things like this, how much you kind of sort of went and researched that and kind of brought that into your film.
I mean, when we talk about references, I really was a child of cinema. It was movie night every night in my house. So a lot of 80s films, they're just embedded into my mind. But modern films that I took great inspiration from was Midsommar and The Hereditary and The Witch. And there's a bit of Wicker Man in there as well. Not the Nicolas Cage one, of course. But I think that, you know, as a filmmaker, it can offer you a great shorthand when you're working. You know, like we were shooting a complicated scene, and I had to tell my first AD what I wanted, and I was able to go, oh, it's like that scene in The Thing, and he knew exactly what I meant and was able to go and set it up. So like that's a wonderful tool, and also to pay homage to greats. I mean, one of the characters is wearing a yellow coat, and that is certainly that's Georgie from It. You know, and we had lots of fun with that. But oh my goodness, what was the second part of your question there? Sorry.
Oh, and yeah, and whether you could kind of research sort of, you know, some of the ancient Irish folklore and kind of things like that.
I mean, we're raised on very dark stories, and you know, we wanted to embed that into the film as much as possible. And what I wanted to do with Mary was that she has an understanding of nature in a way that normal people wouldn't, because it's part of her. And you know, when we see her at the very end, that's her at her most pure and her most powerful. And I wanted to utilize the wealth of history of kind of ancient Ireland. You know, we have ancient Irish symbols, we have pagan symbols, even in on, I was going to say creature design, but a major element in the film, if you look very closely, there's a symbol for rebirth built into the character. And using the Irish language was incredibly fun, you know, because the Irish language is so old, and, you know, we're trying to have a resurgence of the language at the moment, but using it as communing with nature in Ireland was quite natural to the language, because of the nature of how the language actually works. When you look at certain words in Irish and how they, when you look for the definition of it, it kind of spills over as a single word to describe something that in English would take a paragraph. So, you know, it was great to bring the Irish nature into it, because I was trying to make a film that would be accepted globally and would be able to travel, but, you know, to have those core elements just have little bits of home locked into it.
And of course, nature itself is is almost like a character in the film. And, you know, we are very much in the sort of atmosphere of the woods, the mud, the location of the house. So how important was that to your story? And did that pose any challenges in the shoot, kind of capturing nighttime scenes and being out kind of exposed to the elements?
Well, it was vitally important. I wanted to have a tactile nature to the film. I wanted you to be able to feel the cold and to smell the mud, you know, and I think that helps it ground it so much more. And you know, that is what it's that I think when I think of here, like in my travels around the world, like that's the weather I think of. It's kind of cold and gray and wet. So it was really good to kind of immortalize that in my film. And oh my goodness, I'm so sorry. What was the second part of your question?
Oh yeah, I mean, yeah. What did that pose any kind of challenges? Did you have any moments where, oh my God, us and all the cast are freezing to death here?
Well, it did certainly. There's moments in the film where we have everybody's knee deep in mud. So shooting that was incredible. Like we were in that environment for a week, and you know, everybody was knee deep, and we were absolutely covered in mud, and there were holes hidden underneath the mud. I think there was one occasion I was going to talk to my cinematographer and I fell into a hole. So, I mean, I have to, I'm always prepared to be a little bit embarrassed, because I will always end up falling over doing something like that. But, you know, our crew were very well seasoned. Everybody had worked on, you know, the big things here, like Game of Thrones. So we were very well used to being out in the elements at all times. With regards to the cast, you know, I always try and think of cast comfort when I'm deciding on costumes. And I worked very closely with Timmy, my costume designer, to make sure people were warm and comfortable, and you know, to even, you know, put lots of like waterproof thermals and things underneath your clothes, especially when we were in the mud. But you know, those are really important to me. And there were parts in the script where, you know, my main character was maybe a little bit more scantily clad, but I was like, no, let's put her in, like, you know, stained horrible thermals and a big shirt, and give her shoes, and, you know, make sure that 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 my actress can function in that environment, because it's not important to me to torture anyone and make them freezing, because I think that'll make a great performance. It's like, no, there'll be great performances because they're great actors, and they're people first. So I want them to be comfortable. I want them to be warm, and you know, I always love picking coats out for people, and you know, because that's when you look around. I mean, like, I worked on sets where you would all the crew would just be layer upon layer, and you know, we would have hot water bottles and things, and you look at a poor actress and she's just like standing there in a vest in the middle of, you know, winter in Ireland. So that was important to me.
I think I'm almost out of time, but you know, what do you ultimately hope people will take away from watching your film? And do you know what you're going to work on next?
Well, I hope that people take away the kind of the lessons of motherhood, and you know, this and a deeper fear maybe of nature and what is capable, or what's happening in rural towns, and that isolation, and how that breeds, you know, secretive things in the forest. I have quite a few things that I'm working on at the moment. There's a post-apocalyptic sci-fi that I'm very with horror elements, which you know, I've been working on for years, and really pushing for. But you know, there's nothing really going into production as of yet, but there's certainly a lot of possibilities.
Mm. And do you see, you know, now there are more and more opportunities for these kind of female-led films that, you know, and female-directed, explore these different issues? Or do you think we've still got a way to go to kind of bring them really, you know, like to have more and more of them, and more of a breadth of, and diversity of stories?
Oh, I mean, even if I want to think of how many stories we have seen in about men and male issues in all of the different facets. I mean, how many Superman films have there been? I love Superman, but you know, you can never find an end to this. I want to see hundreds of films about this, because you'll always get a different perspective on it, and we need more diversity. Full stop. We will always need more diversity, and we should never stop that mission. And you know, I want to hear stories from different people, even for the sheer fact that I'm tired of the same story over and over again. You know, they're well trodden paths, and we need to make new routes.
Absolutely. Well, thank you so much for sharing all that with me, and I really can't wait for everyone else to have the chance to see Mandrake. Thanks so much.
Thank you.
Lovely to chat to you. Thank you. Cheers.